village was dead. When Edward drove into its boundaries, he was immediately overcome by an uneasy feeling. This was not the usual abandoned place, where houses are slowly falling apart under the influence of time and nature gradually engulfs the streets. Here everything seemed frozen. The wooden houses, although covered in dust and cobwebs, stood strong, without signs of decay. The windows were not broken, the doors did not fly off their hinges. But there was one thing. It seemed that life left this place suddenly. On the veranda of one of the houses there was a table with empty plates, as if the owners had simply gotten up and left without finishing dinner. In another house, behind the drawn curtains, a basket with dried laundry was visible, left in the sun. But most of all, Edward's attention was drawn to the old well in the center of the village. It was entwined with dry roots, with a lopsided wooden canopy. The stones it was made of seemed too smooth, as if someone had polished them for thousands of years. And there was a sign, "Be careful what you wish for." Edward felt his hands tremble. Something in those words worried him. He remembered childhood stories about magic wells that granted wishes, but the warning seemed strange. Why was he careful? And why was the village around him empty? Curiosity got the better of him. He slowly approached and carefully opened the heavy lid. The darkness inside was thick, unnatural. He could not see the water or the bottom. And then the well spoke. "Name your wish." The voice was quiet, low, barely audible, but there was a mesmerizing power in it. Edward flinched and stepped back, his heart pounding in his chest. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the echo. The well was waiting. He swallowed. Of course, it was stupid. Superstition. But what if? Thoughts flashed through his mind. He remembered his life, the endless struggles to get up, the fatigue, the long hours of work with no apparent result. All he wanted was just luck. Before he could change his mind, he whispered, "I want to be lucky." His voice echoed through the well, and for a moment everything was still. And then something moved below. A soft splash, like a drop of water falling far, far away. Edward held his breath, waiting. But nothing happened. Just a feeling of something wrong flitted across his skin, like invisible fingers sliding down his back. He took a step back, trying to convince himself that it was just a figment of his imagination. And then he left. The next day, fortune really smiled on him. He found a wallet on the street, full of money. Then he received an unexpected call offering him a new, prestigious job. A letter was waiting for him at home. He had won the lottery, although he did not even remember buying a ticket. He laughed, not believing that all this was real. But soon his fortune began to change. The lost wallet belonged to a man who was later found dead. The job he was offered turned out to be a place where a high-profile corruption scandal broke out, and all the employees were under investigation. And a few days after winning the lottery, a fire broke out in his house, destroying everything he had. His wishes came true. But each time they brought something dark with them. He tried to ignore it, to convince himself that it was just a coincidence. But one night, lying awake, he heard a whisper. It came from behind a closed window. Quiet, like the movement of the wind. "You got what you deserved. Now it's time to pay." Edward froze. His body felt heavy, the air in the room cold. He felt like something was watching him. And then he understood. The well never gave anything for free. He returned there at dawn. The ground in the village seemed even more frozen than before. The air was thick, viscous, as if the world around him had become different. When he approached the well, the warning sign was gone. "I want to cancel my wish," he whispered into the dark depths. There was no answer. "Do you hear me?" "I don't want it. Take it back." And a soft, almost mocking sigh came from the well. The moral impact of being able to use your will. That's it. All you can have is that's the. If you need it better, I hope you use it. I will not get one word with you. The stones beneath his feet trembled, the air turned icy, the water that hadn't been in the well before suddenly bubbled, making unnatural sounds, like hundreds of voices speaking at once. Something began to crawl out. Gray, thin, twisted, they reached up, writhing like snakes, grasping for air. Edward took a step back, but the ground beneath his feet softened like quicksand. He screamed. The well was pulling him. Cold fingers grabbed his ankles, then his arms, then his neck. The world around him went dark, and the last thing he saw was smooth stones piling up around him like a tomb. Years passed. The village was still abandoned, but if someone came to the well and leaned too close, sometimes they could hear a faint, barely audible voice. The whisper of a new guardian. Name your wish.